Hey guys, this is your teacher, Mrs. Tran-Bloom. We are going to start example 2 on this video. Example 2, a farmer has 16 yards of fence, okay, to enclose a rectangular field. So enclose means I'm going to border a field that is rectangular in shape. What are the dimensions of the rectangle that encloses the most area? So I'm interested in how can I border my rectangular shaped garden so I can have the largest area? Which makes sense because the larger the area, the more I can plant and still use the same amount of fence, okay? So the first piece, we're going to say, hey, what is it that I'm going to answer? What is it I'm trying to answer? So what you are trying to answer is what are the dimensions, okay? So let's write that down. The dimensions of the rectangle that encloses the most area are, okay? And we're going to leave this as a blank. Oops, let me just zoom back here. As a box in answer, and then we'll just fill in our answer here when we are done with the work. So now we're going to do our work. Have a calculator ready, okay? If you don't, just hit pause right now and just go grab your calculator. First things first. First sentence. A farmer has 1,600 yards of fence to enclose a rectangular field. To enclose means I'm going to border. I have to border this, I have to border that, I have to border this, and I have to border that. Okay, so 1,600 yards, it's actually your perimeter. Okay, and the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle is this base plus that height plus this base plus that height. So technically I have 2w plus 2x based on this drawing. Because the perimeter is 1,600, I can substitute perimeter for 1,600. So I'm going to end up with 2w plus 2x equals 1,600. Okay? We're going to kind of think about it, keep it on the side until we're going to use what we want to, we're going to use it in a little bit to find our answer. What are the dimensions of the rectangle that encloses the most area? So now I need to find the area. Area of a rectangle is simply length times width, or base times height. Based on the drawing, it's x times w. Okay? So let's just shorten this up. So area equals x times w. Now, I can technically put it in my calculator and find my answer, but because this equation has two variables, you need to decide which variable you want to write the equation in terms of. Okay, so you can pick, and by the way, it doesn't really matter which one you want to pick. So because I have area equals two variables, x and y, you can't do that. Pick one variable. So we're going to write area in terms of, let's say, the width. Okay? So what that means is that you are now going to rewrite this areas in terms of width. That means you may only have w as part of your equation. Okay? So x is not a w. I'm going to have to substitute or replace that. Just like yesterday's notes or earlier in class, we substitute x. So whatever x is, I'm going to have to substitute that in there. I'm just going to put w down here. Okay? So let's find what x is. Did it give you x equals in the problem? No, it didn't. Okay? It wasn't as easy as example 1 where it says x equals. Well, is there another equation that we can maybe solve for x? Oh, you mean like this equation over here? Sure, let's use that to solve for x, okay? So because this has an x and a w, let's solve for it. To solve for x, I'm going to subtract 2w from both sides. So 1600 minus 2w equals 2x. We are now going to divide each and every term by 2. So x is 1600 divided by 2 is 800. 2w divided by 2 is a w. Okay? So x is, look at that, we can totally solve for it. Okay? 800 minus a w. So that's what I'm going to write in here. 800 minus a w. So we can keep our answer in this way, or we can distribute. So area in terms of w equals, when I distribute, w times a negative w is negative w squared. W times a positive 800 is positive 800. Okay? But I'm not going to box that up. That is just my area formula. Now, I'm going to use my calculator. Now, this piece is the same as example 1. Okay? And I even have example 1 equation in there, which I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to enter in. Ready? Negative x squared plus 800. Okay. Now, how would I know what to enter in for x min and x max? Well, let's talk about what x. Okay. In here, in the equation, we use w. Over here, we use x. Okay, in the equation. They should mean the same thing. Okay. So our input stands for the width, which is w. Okay. Well, if we are looking at the domain of the width, so domain of width. Well, if we're looking at the domain, meaning that we're looking at the distance, so we cannot have 0 at all. Okay, we can have as close to 0 as we want, but we can't have 0. Because the moment the width is 0, then you don't even have a rectangle. So then that means you don't have an area. So the width is between 0, okay, all the way to, okay, let's talk about the value that it can be max at. If you have 1600 yards of fence, okay, well, if your x distance, your length distance, let's just say is very, very, very close to 0, not 0, none of these can be 0, but very close to 0, then this, okay, so your two width added together could be very, very close to 1600, slightly less than 1600. Would you agree? If the length, okay, top length and bottom length are not zeros, but the two lengths are close to 0, then this is still, that will leave me the two w's added up to be 1600. So that means, okay, I'm going to be very close. That means half of that, it's going to be 800. Okay, so that's how I kind of determine my dimension. So I can put it in my x min and x max. So I can have as close to 0 as I want. I just can't be 0. And then I can have as close to 800 as I want. They just can't be exactly 800. Okay, so now that I have that in, let's do zoom and zoom fit. So we're going to go down to number 9. Nope, number 10. Hit enter. Alright, so now look at this. The calculator doesn't know that we're dealing with area, so it's giving you a lot of negative values. So go back to window. Look at this. It's giving you negative 639,000 in negative values. You don't need any negative value at all, so start at 0. You can't have negative areas. So, alright. So notice how you have this little tiny piece right here. Let me see if I enter it in right. Window, y equals negative x squared plus, oops, you know what I forgot? W, when I distribute. Okay, that's why it didn't work. See that right there? Ooh, that is so wrong. Alright, let's go over and put x over here. X. Zoom, fit. Alright, there it is. And we are expecting upside down parabola because of negative w squared. Okay, so we have this area equals, and this is my width, x is my width, and then we have y is my area. So I'm looking for the dimensions of the rectangle that encloses the most area r. That means I'm going to have two answers. So let's find out what the largest area is by doing second trace. Go to max. And then hit right bound, go all the way to the right. Hit enter. Okay. All right, so now let's check this out. The largest area that we can have is 160 and then 3 zeros after that. So 160,000 yards squared. Okay. That's the largest area I can have. I'm not looking for the largest area. I'm looking for the dimensions. So if you look at this, this is 0.999, and then if you round it to whole number, x should be 400. Well, x is really w in here. So based on your calculator, w is 400 yards. Okay. Area, I'm not asking for. I'm just writing down the information. 160,000 yards square. Okay. Well, now what we need to do is, it says dimensions. That means I'm looking for base and height, or length and width. It doesn't matter how you write it. So r, so I can technically put in 400 yards right away. But I also need this piece right here. So how would I get this piece, knowing this piece already? Okay, so my question is, how would I find the base if I know the height? Okay, then I would take this formula. See this right here? Or you can even take this. All you have to do is put in 400 for w. It doesn't matter which formula you use as long as you use one. And even you don't even need to use a formula. You can just take 1600, subtract 400, subtract another 400, then whatever's left over, you divide it by 2. Okay? So, but because we are in math and we want to sound smart, what if I use this formula? Okay? Area equals x times w. Area is 160,000 equals to x is x, w is 400. Okay, so if I were to solve for x, I could divide both sides by 400. Okay, so x is going to come out to be, the two zeros will cancel each other. All right, then I have 1,600 divided by 4 equals x. So now 16 divided by 4, that's 4. Okay, and then carry down by 2 zeros. Okay, so x is 400. So my answer, the dimensions of the rectangle that encloses the most area are 400 yards by 400 yards. And yes, you do need both answers. Okay, dimensions is usually telling me the length and the width, or the base and the height. Now, if you ask me, I'm like, you can say, hey, isn't that a square? It is. It is a square. Okay, but a square is also a rectangle based on the definition of a rectangle. All right. With that said, I hope you if you don't understand it, just listen to it again. All of these are kind of very similar. So if you don't understand one problem, you're not going to be able to understand the next problem well. Okay, so make sure you hit pause, go back, and just listen to it again. All right, now let's move on to example 3. Example 3 says, here we go, let's zoom in. A projectile is fired from a cliff of 500 feet above the water at an inclination of 45 degrees to the horizontal, with a muzzle velocity of 400 feet per second. In physics, it is established that the height, which is h, of the projectile above the water is given by. So they're nice. They're giving you an equation. See that right there? Let me see if I can turn the lights. Okay, let's make it darker. All right. So h of x equals negative 32x squared divided by 400 squared plus x plus 500. where x is the horizontal distance. Let's highlight this because this is super important. Okay, x is the horizontal distance from the base of the cliff. Okay, that means h. Let's find what h is. H is the height, okay, above water. All right, so we need to know which ones are input and which ones are output. Those are important. So let's look at A. Find the maximum height of the projectile. Okay, so let's answer A. The maximum height of the projectile is, and then we can just fill it in. Okay. So first things first, let's give you a little sketch of what this is talking about. The projectile is fired from a cliff 500 feet above water. So let's draw some water. Here's some water. Okay. Here's a nice cliff. And this cliff is said to be 500 feet. That's what it says. And somewhere I'm firing something up. Okay. Like a rocket or fireworks or a ball or whatever you want to fire up. It goes up that way. Okay. Excuse me. And it's taken into consideration of 45 degrees already. So this is the equation that it gave you. All right. So how do I do this? All you have to do is enter in your calculator. Let's start. Go to y equals, clear out what you have before. Enter in this equation. Okay. Now you have to be very cautious of how to enter that in. If you enter in wrong, you're not going to get the right answer. So let's start with a negative, not a minus, a negative. 32x squared. And notice how this is dividing by 400 squared. So let's divide. Okay, 400 squared. See that right there? Now, the smart thing for us to do is to put this entire piece, okay, in a set of its own parentheses. So I'm going to go parentheses there. Because I'm closing a parentheses, I need to go over here and put in an open parentheses. So what I'm going to go is all the way over. Instead of deleting the entire piece, hit second and insert. Okay, so second insert will allow me to go in and insert a parentheses without deleting what I've already entered. Okay, so now that I have that piece enter in, let's enter in x and let's enter in 500. Okay. You will need to figure out what your x window is. So let's figure out what the window is. Window. We are looking at x is the horizontal distance. So distance can never be negative. So it is okay for us to be at 0. Okay, for x min. X max. Okay, so x max, it's going to have talked about hey, how far do I need to go? So that means is when y is 0. When y is 0, okay, so what happened when y is 0? We might want to solve for x, right? So if this is an object that was shooting up, let's try 500. What do you think? Okay, I'm going to try this number to see if that works. So zoom fit. So zoom and then 0. All right, so notice how it's kind of shooting up right there. Okay, and my x max is not enough, so let's go back to the window and change it some more. Check your equation to make sure things look okay. So you have negative 32x squared divided by 400 squared, and then I added the x. Let's move over to see if we enter in right, and then we added 500. Window 0 to 500, that's not quite enough. Let's go 0 to 1000. Zoom fit again. Okay, it's slowly making its parabola, so let's do window. I'm going to try, how about 2000, double that. Okay, so notice how it's kind of curving a little bit. I forgot to do zoom fit. Let's do zoom fit. All right, it's kind of curving now. See, it's not a straight line anymore. So window, instead of 2,000, let's do 5,000. Remember, this is an object that you're shooting, so it's going to be quite far. Oh, and you know what? I should do zoom fit. Let's go back and do zoom fit. Zoom fit. All right, so there you go. There's your zoom fit. So we have x min. So now we're going to write down the window, okay? Because anytime that you are graphing it, you might want to write down the window. So later, when you go back to study, you know how or where you got the answer from. So our window, let's look at it. Okay, x min is from 0 to 5,000. So here we go. So window, x min. Go ahead and write that down. X max. Write that down. Y min. Write that down. Y max. Write that down. Because we were all following the right steps on your calculator, you should have these values on your calculator. So I'm not going to show you the calculator again. Your job is to fill this out. Fill out on your own. All right. Alright, so now we have this nice, awesome upside down parabola. We can definitely find the maximum height of the projectile is. So we're going to go second trace max. Second trace max. Go over to the left. Go over to the right. Okay, so check it out. I have two answers. So should I put down the maximum height of the projectile is 2,500. X is the horizontal distance. What was the unit of measurement? 500 feet. So should we put down X equals 2,500 feet for this answer? No, you cannot do that because the maximum height, meaning I'm looking for H, and H in this equation, it's the output. So we have to write Y as our answer. So maximum height of the projectile is 1,750 and the unit of measurement is feet. All right, let's do part B. Part B says, how far from the base of the cliff will the projectile strike water? Okay, so let's look at my drawing. Here's the base, right? Base. Here's when it strikes water. Strikes water. And let's make some splash. Water splash. Ooh, water splash. Ooh, water splash. Right? Alright. Ooh, that looks... Alright. So, it's asking how far, meaning that I'm looking at the horizontal distance, which is really here. Okay? Because it's looking at horizontal distance, what do you think the height is? If it's looking for striking water, that means the height is 0. Okay, so let's answer part B in a complete sentence. Let's see, how far from the base of the cliff will the projectile strike water? The projectile strikes water at blank feet from the base of the cliff. Okay, let's find out what that is. Ready? All right, here is my awesome graph, right? This is the path of that particular item that we are shooting. It went up, it went down. So, if I want to know how far it traveled, then that means the y value is 0. Okay, so that's what we're going to need to find. I want to find when y is 0. So second trace, I want to find 0, which is this piece right here. And it's going to ask 3 questions always, left bound, right bound. Okay, so this is left bound, which is here. So let's go look at the left. I'm going to go y is positive, hit enter. Right bound, because I have to go below the x-axis, so my y values should be negative. But it's not letting me go below negative. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Okay, so what we need to do is the calculator is not smart enough to know, but hey, it can actually go. So what we're going to do is go y min. Notice how here is giving you 500. Let's change it to negative 500. Okay, graph it. So notice how it's starting here at a cliff. That's why it's above. Okay, and then I want to go over to where it touches the x-axis. So make your window slightly larger. Let's do 7,000. All right, check that out. So now I'm starting above at the cliff, shooting up, shooting back down. This is water, so I'm striking water right there. So this is where I want a second trace. Second trace, oops, second trace, and then 0, which is this piece, and left bound, which I have it above, enter. Right bound, I want to go below this x-axis, so right there. As long as the y value is negative, you are good. Hit enter. Yes, I do want you to guess. All right, so look at it. It gives you 5,458, and if we're rounding to, because these numbers are pretty large, so let's just round to whole foot. So this is at 5,458 feet. Okay, so the projectile strikes water at 5,458 feet from the base of the cliff. Now, it is a parabola, but it's not always twice, okay, twice the middle, because this one, we're not starting at 0, 0. So make sure you understand that concept. Because the first 2 problems, I understand that you can just double it and then get your answer. But this one is not quite the same because we're not starting at 0, 0. Okay. All right, this is the end of our video notes today. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in class.